Welcome to Two Old Geeks Talking. I'm Rob,
I'm Trace.
and today we're discussing 80s cartoons, part one. So I really went down a rabbit hole with this one because there's so much good cartoons put out in the 80s. And I also come to the realization that I think one reason we're so nostalgic about the 80s cartoons, and most of our viewers are, is because prior to that, we only had weekly cartoons. It wasn't until things such as Disney's Power Hour and Nickelodeon was involved. This was well before Cartoon Network.
Yeah, there was a time where, the only time you could watch cartoons was on Saturday. So,
Right.
People call them 80s cartoons. I still kind of call them Saturday morning cartoons because
that was the way we were raised.
yeah, I mean, and we were raised on a farm, so you didn't always get to watch Saturday cartoons on Saturday.
No.
If it was rainy or really cold and you couldn't work out on the farm, we got to stay in. So not only did we not get cartoons throughout the week typically, but Saturday, if we got to stay in, man, that was a treat.
Right.
That was a treat.
So I went to Facebook and Instagram and asked our viewers what were some of their favorite 80s cartoons, and got some great suggestions. We're going to cut it down to the top 10. First episode, this one, will be the first 5, and then the next episode will be the next 5. I had to exclude cartoons that was airing in the 80s but didn't get released in the 80s. Cartoons such as Fat Albert, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Battle Planet, Super Friends. Now, they were all out before the 80s, so we're just sticking to the ones that released in the 80s. And you can see I've got a list and a half of cartoons that came out in just the 80s, and I won't even rattle them all off. So let's start off with the very first one, and that would be Transformers. Transformers was released in 1984 and ran original series ran until 87. Transformers was basically based off a Japanese toy company called Diacon. Hasbro ended up buying the right from Takara, and then they turned to Marvel and said, "Hey, can you all kind of give these characters personalities and names?" And they were like, "Yeah." So they jumped on board. One of the animation studios you're going to hear a lot of is Toei Animation. It's called TOEI. It's over in Japan. They originally started doing the animation for Transformers, and in the later part of the first generation, it was done in South Korea by AKOM, AKOM. It started out as a 3-part miniseries, and the name of the miniseries?
Transformers.
Nope, it was called More Than Meets the Eye.
More Than Meets the Eye.
Yeah, ain't that? I mean, and it's just that's been one of the catchphrases from the get-go, so it's pretty cool.
What? Just to cut in real fast. I mean, what I like about a lot of 80s cartoons, a lot of people give them grief because they were tied in a lot of toy lines.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, the success of Star Wars, the movie, and the Star Wars toy line in the 70s, everybody wanted a piece of that pie.
Oh, right.
So, but to me, it never was a problem because a cartoon without a toy was kind of sad, because if you watched the cartoon, you wanted the toy. And if you had a toy without a cartoon, yeah, you could use your own imagination like we did with Johnny West and Jay West or Geronimo figures and stuff like that. But it was kind of nice to have a cartoon to kind of go along with your fandom. So, I kind of like the whole merchandising thing, but 80s is really when that really kicked off.
Oh, yeah. So the premise of Transformers was there was 2 groups of a warring race that come from a planet called Cybertron. You had the Decepticons and the Autobots. Well, the reason they left the planet is because they had exhausted all their power source and they were out looking for more. Well, The leader of the Autobots, Optimus Prime, had thought that he had sent the Decepticons, led by Megatron, spinning into space. So he turned around to go back home, crash landed into the planet, and for over 4 million years they were entombed into the planet. The ship ended up watching the planet as it evolved and determined that what it saw most was vehicles as its primary race. So when they were awakened, that's what they allowed them to kind of disguise themselves as.
Yeah.
In the 80s cartoon, they were assisted by 2 humans, which is kind of odd. A father and son duo, and it was Spike and Sparkplug Wiki.
Yeah, that's a real common name.
Yeah, sure. In season 2, fun fact, was when the very first female Transformer was introduced. Her name was RC, ARCEE. In the beginning of the season, she transformed into a car. It wasn't until later in the seasons they had her transforming into a pink and white motorcycle.
Oh, that's why you can tell the difference between male and female Transformers.
Right, exactly.
This color scheme. So who's your favorite Transformer?
Oh, I like Shockwave.
Shockwave?
Yeah. I always kind of lean towards villains and stuff like that.
I like, yeah, I could tell that.
Yeah. Right.
I like Optimus Prime. I just love the guy that did his voice. It was Peter Cullen was his name.
Exactly. Yep.
And then my wife, she always was a big fan of Bumblebee.
Oh yeah, mine is. That must be a girl thing. My wife is too.
Yeah.
So let's see. In '86, an animated movie was released, and of course Peter Cullen did the voice. But Megatron in that movie ends up almost losing his life and ends up getting turned into somebody called Galvatron. Do you know who voiced Galvatron? Leonard Nimoy.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's kind of a little interesting fun fact. All right. Our next cartoon.
Is Peter Cullen still alive?
Yes, he does the voices for the movies.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. He's awesome, man.
Kick butt. Good. The movies wouldn't be the same without hearing Optimus Prime's actual voice.
Well, those movies aren't so good, most of them are, but we'll stick to the cartoons.
If you're a geek, you'll enjoy them. All right, so the next one is HeMan, also known as HeMan Masters of the Universe, which ran from, I was looking in that light and it kind of blinded me there for a second, 83 to 85. Now, here's something that's pretty cool. Filmation Studios done that, and they were the last animation studio in America to actually do everything in the house. They didn't outsource anything. From the moment that the writer thought of the story to the moment it actually hit the air, all of that was done in their studio in Texas. And it was led by a Lou Schimmer.
Yeah.
And I think it's sad that, don't get me wrong, I love animation, but I think it was kick butt that it was all still done here in one spot.
Yeah, HeMan didn't really run that long, did it? I mean, it was I think it was like a couple of seasons, but to me it seemed like it was longer.
Right.
And our little brother Matthew.
Well, I think a lot of it was syndication.
Our little brother Matthew was a huge HeMan fan,
right,
so he had all the HeMan figures. And when you look back on them, they seem kind of ridiculous. I mean, they were just these big, huge muscles.
And they all had the same body.
Yeah, the same body, different colors and different heads.
Right.
And that was merchandising at its best. But yeah, I mean, when you look back at those figures now, they didn't have much articulation.
Oh, no.
And the bodies were all exactly the same. But
yep.
Some of those original ones are worth big money.
Yeah. And compared to what was being released, HeMan action figures and the Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtle figures were some of the largest figures released. I mean, you could literally get your hands around those toys. So Netflix rebooted it, and it only ran 2 seasons on that as well.
HeMan?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't watch.
Here's another fun fact. I'm just full of fun facts. Marvel took animation studios to court over HeMan, saying that they were blatantly ripping off Conan the Barbarian.
Oh my gosh!
Right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Come on, Marvel.
Of course they lost.
I'm a Marvel fan, but that's stupid.
So the premise of this story is there's a place called Eternia, and in the kingdom, there's a prince, and his name is Prince Adam. And he ends up coming across the power sword, which, I have the power. He becomes He-Man.
Prince Adam looked exactly like a He-Man.
Right.
Except he wore pink, I think, right?
Yeah. It was none of
like, he can't be
It
He-Man.
wasn't like Superman and
He
eyeglasses.
can't be He-Man. He's got pink on.
Yeah, but look at that loincloth.
He can't be Superman. He's got glasses on.
So it spawned a movie in '87 starring Dolph Lundgren. He didn't do good with Punisher. I don't think he did good with He-Man.
He tried. He really tried.
Yeah. God bless him. Alrighty, our next cartoon is G.I. Joe.
Oh man.
Not just G.I. Joe, but G.I. Joe, the real American hero.
Let me butt in for a second. Now,
No, go ahead.
Now, I grew up with G.I. There was one G.I. Joe, and it was like one dude you got, and he come with dog tags.
Right.
And he had like little fuzzy hair that was actually fuzzy. You could rub it, and it was very comforting. And he had kung fu grip.
Right.
Which I'm not sure what kung fu grip is, but he had it. And but then when they come out with G.I. Joe and it was a whole team, it kind of threw me off a little bit.
Right.
But it was actually a real fun cartoon.
Right.
But I thought it was funny how they always shot lasers and not bullets.
Well, that was because they were worried about violence.
Yeah, because lasers, and nobody ever hit anybody, or nobody ever died in the G.I. Joe.
Right.
So I guess.
So, okay, since we opened up this can of worms, do you know how you can tell an original G.I. Joe doll from like a forgery?
I do not know.
The thumbnail is actually printed on the inside of the thumb instead of the outside of the thumb.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so you can actually tell that it's a real G.I. Joe.
Cool.
Alrighty, so G.I. Joe ran from 85 to 86. That's only a year for the animation cartoon.
Oh, I love that show, though.
And of course, it was produced by Marvel, and Hasbro backed it up for toys. Now, here's the premise. You ready? G.I. Joe is the code name of America's daring, highly trained mission force. Its purpose to defend human freedom against Cobra and the ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world. So that's the premise. It was right there in the beginning of each episode, right?
Yeah, what I liked about it is they had like over the top bad guys, and they had all these stereotypical, you had the sailor guy, shipwrecked, they had the parrot,
But much like we talked about Star Trek, it had a diversity of people.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But, who's your favorite G.I. Joe?
Shipwreck.
Shipwreck, seriously?
I don't know why. I think it's the beard.
Yeah. Snake Eyes, man. I like Snake Eyes.
Okay. Let me keep going.
Okay.
Because we're gonna get into that. Okay. So G.I. Joe is known basically for one of the most things it's known for is its PSA at the end, right? Now you know. How many of you said, and knowing is half the battle, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's known for. So we go back into the dolls. The dolls were started in the 12-inch dolls was started in '64. Now the reason that the dolls stopped being made and slowed down was because of the Vietnam War. People were against war at the time. So in the 80s, they came out with a 3.75 action figure. We call 4-inch action figures. But they wasn't doing that great, and this was before the cartoons come out. Now, back to Snake Eyes. Marvel Comics released in March of '84 a comic book called Silent Interlude. Do you remember it?
Oh, man, you got it, right?
Yeah. Any geek in the world who knows G.I. Joe knows that this was the first comic book that had no dialogue whatsoever.
Right, it was all just told through pictures.
The sales and the popularity of G.I. Joe because of that one comic went whew.
Was that the first issue that had Storm Shadow in it? I think so.
It might have been.
Yeah.
So that's what spawned the cartoon. And Snake Eyes and the fact that there was no dialogue and the popularity is what caused G.I. Joe to become
Do
popular.
you know they're making a Snake Eyes movie now?
No.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, they've already had Snake Eyes in some of the other movies.
Yeah, but it's in pre-production, just a Snake Eyes movie.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Hopefully it'll be
a
good.
quiet movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Might be one Mama could go to. All right, our next cartoon, and I know this is one of your favorites.
Oh, man, I love Thundar the Barbarian.
It's Thundar the
And
Barbarian.
did Marvel sue them because it actually has Barbarian in the name?
No, not really.
Thundar the Barbarian, they tried very hard to make that as an adult cartoon as you could in the 80s. You didn't have a whole lot of adult cartoons in the 80s.
They did. They actually confessed that they were gearing towards adults.
And I mean, Jack Kirby, who I'm a huge fan of, who did a lot of the art in Thor, and I got a lot of Silver Age Thor comics, and I love his art. I mean, some people say it's basic and a little bit squarish, but
right.
I mean, to me, he had an incredible imagination, and I love the fact that he did that art.
Can you tell he's a geek for Thundar?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't need to read these cards. You're just.
Oh no, he had the Sun Sword. And Princess Ariel, and they had Ookla. Yeah,
who in the 80s cartoons didn't have some kind of power sword?
Well, that's true. I mean, it was obvious the Sun Sword was as close to a lightsaber as you get without being sued.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, those were good. As a matter of fact, I have that on my birthday list. Somebody giving me the DVDs.
Oh,
yeah. I don't know if I'll
do they have a box set?
Yeah, they got a box set.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
all right. So for you people who don't know, Thundar the Barbarian ran from 1980 to 1981, just that 1 year. It was created by Steve Gerber. The production company was Ruby Spears Production. Now, here's the premise of the cartoon. It was a post-apocalyptic cartoon set in 3994. Still haven't got to that year.
Yeah.
The Earth and the moon had a planet split between the two of them, which caused the moon to split in half. Once it settled back into the rotation of the Earth, it created what they called New Earth.
I used to love the way it came on.
Right.
They would say, and one man burst his bonds for freedom. And for some reason, I always thought that was funny.
That's all right. So the whole world had been separated into territories run mostly by wizards. Let's see. We already went over that. We've been talking. Let's see. So the primary characters in it is Thundar the Barbarian, Princess Ariel, a sorceress.
Yeah, she was hot.
Yeah.
For an animated character.
And Ookla, a mock. M-O-K. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
A mock?
Yeah.
Because I kept wanting to say.
Yeah, it was as close as Chewbacca as you can get without
right?
being Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Right.
So, the sword, like you said, it was called the Sun Sword. Just a hilt on the arm. The thing was nobody else could use that sword because it was actually linked to Thundar. So nobody else could have ever used it. Now, here was the sword's power. It could cut through anything.
Lightsaber.
Right? And it disrupted any magical spells. Well, when your main bad guys are wizards, that kind of comes in handy.
It does come in handy.
Yeah, right?
Some plot armor there.
So, do you remember his catchphrase?
Demon dogs?
Oh.
Great demon dogs?
Well, that might have been one of them, but the one I remember is Lord of Lights.
Oh, yeah. You said that too.
I used to think that's what I got a kick out of was that there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching them again.
Now,
I hope they hold up.
Here's the sad part about Thundar.
Oh, don't make me cry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. So, it was rumored that it was canceled because it was too violent.
I heard that.
It was rumored that it went down in popularity. The ratings went down.
I heard that.
But, this is what I think is the truth. Back in the day, in the 80s, there was a guy named Gary Marshall. Everything he touched was gold. He had the TV series Mork and Mindy, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley. So ABC loved this guy. He was raking in the money. Well, he decided he wanted to get a whole new genre of people, a whole new demographic. And so he said, I want to come up with a Saturday morning cartoon called Fonz and the Happy Day Gang. And this is when I want it to air. And they were like, whatever you say, we'll do. So they didn't try to move Thundar. They didn't try to revamp it or do anything.
So Fonzie killed Thundar.
Fonzie killed Thundar.
Oh, man.
Thanks, Fonz.
Right.
All righty. And last but not least, we have the Thundercats.
Here, we can stick it in here, and then we'll just lay it this way.
See?
Oh, man. Did I get it right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thundercats, that was pretty original.
Yeah, it was pretty original in ways, and then not in other ways.
Do you know they were all nude in the first episode?
Right?
Yeah, they didn't have clothes.
That's hot.
Yeah. Somewhere, like second episode, it was like, hey, man, you want to put pants on?
But they didn't have any genitalia either. So
so, that's kind of useless.
All right, so Thundercats ran from 85 to 89. And here's the premise of the story. You had Lionel. He was leaving his planet of Thundera because it was getting ready to explode. Sound like Superman? Maybe not so original, right?
A little bit.
So his stasis pod was damaged. So when they landed, he still had the mind of a 12-year-old, but his body had grown into an adulthood.
That's disgusting.
Right? Kind of. And a lot of people forget that, some of the things, they're like, Lionel's stupid as hell. Well, no, he was actually just a naive 12-year-old.
Yeah, but he was still their leader.
Yeah, because he was the heir.
Okay. Royalty,
right?
Europe.
Yeah. So, of course, he had companions. You had Panther, Tigra, what was her name? Chitara. Wily Cat, and of course, who cannot forget? Snarf.
You always had a character like Snarf.
Right.
You had like, what was the little dude in HeMan?
Orko.
Yeah. And then did they have something in
Yes, they had something in everything.
And everything, yeah. It was like let's have relief. A little like.
Well, I kind of felt bad for Snarf after I got older because I realized that he was just basically a wet nurse.
Yeah.
Well, how do you do a wet nurse to a grown human person? I mean, you can't really be a nanny if you don't.
I like Thundercats. Snarf just irritated me.
Yeah, he did. He was irritating as hell.
He looked like a possum.
So there was another character who died upon their crash named Jaga.
Yeah, he was the old dude.
Right, he was the old dude. He was his mentor and wise old sage. Now,
I thought about cosplaying as him, but nobody would know.
Which one? Are you going to do the live one or the dead one? Because he comes back as a blue glowing ghost. Sounds like Star Wars, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does sound like Star Wars.
So was it really that original? So,
I wish they would make a live action.
Now, here's a fun fact. This wise old sage is the reason they had to leave. He is the reason that Thundera got destroyed. He had actually defeated a villain called Radula, and took his sword, the sword of Thundar, and he tossed it into the deepest cavern of the planet. Well, it went to the core and caused the planet to explode. So actually, Jaga, the guy that's supposed to be the wise old sage, is the reason they had to leave home in the first place. Yeah, spoilers.
Well, the only, besides Snarf, the only thing I didn't like about Thundercats is that the Sword of Omen.
Okay, yeah.
It seemed to just, the abilities of the sword seemed to change per episode. Like, in other words, if the heroes were in peril,
right,
and they needed help with something, the Sword of Omens just happened to have that power.
Right.
So I mean, I know it was kind of lazy writing, but
no, that's exactly what it was, and the writers actually admitted to it. They said if there was a situation we couldn't get him out of, we had the Sword of Omens. One time it grew to be a 30-foot pole vault. Only one time in all those cartoons it actually helped him fly. Why wouldn't you use that ability all the time?
Right.
So since we're on the Sword of Omens, in the center of the Sword of Omens is something called the War Stone. And the War Stone helped him have that sight beyond sight, being able to see into the future. Now, you would think he'd be able to keep his butt out of a lot more trouble if he could see into the trouble.
Go to Vegas, win a lot of money.
Right? So, the sword was kept in the gauntlet of omens because it shortened itself down and then grew kind of phallus-like.
Yeah,
right.
I'm with you.
Okay, so let's talk about the antagonist. Mumra, right.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people back then, maybe as you've got older, you've realized that Mumra is actually as old as the planet. Now, the planet's called Third Earth, and it's not because of like DC Comics where you have Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3.
Right.
It was literally like the third era of Earth. Momra had been around from the get-go, like even before you and I. He was a mummy, and he got his powers from the spirits of evil. And so he pulled down a planet, destroyed the planet, and used it to make the sword of Thundar, which got stolen and went off into space. He couldn't go after it because he was stuck on Earth.
Seems complicated.
Right? So that's the sword that ended up destroying Thundera. So then, he's the ruler of this planet.
Yeah.
Has been all his whole life.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden these wet-nosed snot kids come around and like, no, we're going to be the boss. And he's like, I ain't having that crap. Right? So I always kind of rooted for the bad guy because they almost had better backstories.
Yeah, we had all those figures too.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Thundercat figures, and I'm big into martial arts. And there was a HeMan was a character that was a side character that would appear on Thundercats every once in a while. He was a samurai.
I think I remember him.
Yeah. So they actually made a toy of him. So he had a samurai sword and the samurai helmet that come off and samurai armor. So I mean, I got that figure.
The 80's was really into anthropomorphic.
I wonder where that figure is. I wonder if Matt's got that figure now. I don't know, but I love that thing. Anyway.
Alrighty, so that's what we have for part 1 of 80's cartoons.
All right, sounds great. Look
Alrighty.
forward to part 2, and we'll do that in a couple of weeks, and I'm done.
All right, I'm done.
All right, I think we're done.
I think we're done.